Got the new thing.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Guam Tax Commission's meeting. I'd have my staff conduct the roll call.
The Committee on Education, Finance, and Taxation set out a first notice for this Tax Commission meeting on May 2nd, 2018, and second notice on May 4th, 2018. For the record, today is May 8th, 2018, and the time is now 5:01. Chairman, Senator Joe S. Agustin. Vice Chairman, Speaker Benjamin J. Cruz. Minority Leader, Senator James V. Espaldon. Economist, Mr. Joseph Bradley. Guam Society of Certified Public Accountant, Mr. Joe Arnett. Guam Bankers Association, Mr. Byron Evaristo. Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Bobby Syringi. Women's Chambers of Commerce, Ms. Patricia Salas. Guam Bar Association, Mr. Lawrence Baruch. Governor of Guam Designee, Benito. Guam Congressional Designee, Mr. John Jr. Calvo. Office of Public Auditor, Public Auditor Doris Flores Brooks. Office of Attorney General of Guam, Honorable Elizabeth Barrett Anderson. Department of Revenue and Tax, Director John Calvo. Camacho. Department of Administration, Director Edward Burns. Oh, right. Vince Ariola. Bureau of Budget and Management Research, Director Lester Jr. Carlson. Bureau of Statistics and Plans, Albert Paris. Department of Labor, Dr. Sam Mabini. Guam Economic Development Authority. Certified Public Accountant, Mr. Robert Steffi. The University of Guam, Doreen Chrysostamo.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, members, you received a copy through the email of the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve, subject to any administrative corrections?
There's two corrections. On page 1, under old business, it's pending quote, not pending quota. And on page 3, I said like eliminating the earned income credit, not just the income tax credit.
Okay. Try that one more time. Where are we at? Second. What was the first one you were identifying?
On the front page, quote.
Oh,
not
quote.
Quota, quote.
Okay, because quote.
We're waiting for a quote.
Okay. And then the next one was?
Page 3, earned income credit.
Okay.
Earned income.
Okay, earned. Is any other corrections? You have a motion to approve with the corrections?
So moved.
So moved? Thank you. Second by Senator Espaldon. We'll move on to some of the old business. Ms. Benito, you have a follow-up on the cost of the economic model from the vendor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, we haven't had the chance to identify exactly what we need from the vendor, but they have been working on the new changes. In the meantime, they're looking at all the program changes that might take place. So we're also having a meeting with them tomorrow, and we should have more update on that.
All right, thank you. We have the Chamber of Commerce that's not present, Mr. Bobby Stringy, supposed to follow up with his polls with the business members. But before we proceed to the new business, which starts out Mr. Bradley, I'd like to ask Ms. Sala, she provided us all a copy of the polls, am I correct?
Yes, that's the poll that was reported and is on page, starts on page 1 of the minutes from last meeting. That I just gave a hard copy. I do want to say, though, that I submitted a revised version that just is dated on each page, because it's important to note that this poll was taken the last 2 weeks of 2017, holiday season, and also with all the uncertainty. Nobody knew what was going on. The Trump tax plan had not been passed. And so that was just the poll that was done at that time. So I caution the commission that that's the timing of it.
Okay. Will you be conducting a new poll with your
We can.
members?
We can do another one now that it's all, now that we know what the tax plan is, but we still don't know what its effects are, but we can poll our membership, sure. There was a poll that was done after our tax forum, which I was hoping to provide to this body today, but I don't have it, and I will, I do have it, I just needed to tweak a few things, and I can present that for the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. We do have present now Mr. Bobby Stringy, and also Senator Brooks is present. Not a problem. All right. No problem. We will move now to Mr. Stringy.
Yes, sir.
Were you able to conduct
Right.
any of the polls, or?
Okay. Well, first of all, my apologies for coming a little late. Parking was a challenge out there. The mass is just about beginning. In terms of the survey, what we're working on right now is a combination questionnaire, which not only, and I know, my apologies, we never got a chance to do this one before, and I had a chance to speak with Catherine at the Chamber's office. And what we're going to work on is a survey among membership that will detail a number of things. First and foremost, the impact, of course, in terms of the tax cuts, and basically looking at where these businesses are looking at investing their gains and whatnot. But of course, in the bigger picture, because in the last 6-8 months, there's been discussions on, actually not discussions, but on all these tax increases, sort of looking at where, what's the impact, what's the feel, how has it impacted them, is it bigger than it was, is it really minute? So I think we want to sort of look at where that's going with the membership. So as I had mentioned to you a little bit earlier this afternoon, what we want to do is poll our members, get that feel, because it's once again, it's a combination of issues, and you hear all types. Have the tax increases impacted them? Some say yes, some say no, but we want to sort of get a feel of the membership in terms of that.
All right, thank you, sir. Now we will proceed to Mr. Bradley. Sir, you've conducted an economic forum, if I'm correct, and maybe you can give us a brief summary of the economic forum on what direction maybe the tax commission should pursue or avoid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The format of the economic forum this time around was somewhat different than previous times. I started out saying that I would be very brief, that there would be no charts, no graphs, and no numbers. And that seemed to make everybody really happy. I did want to make 5 points, though, of items that are really going to be affecting the economy within the next period of time. The first of those is that political instability is causing economic disruption globally. It's particularly in Europe and in South Asia, but I think that there are ripple effects throughout. Second, climate change is already upon us. It's not going to be here 50 years from now. We're seeing rising sea levels throughout Micronesia. We are also seeing increases in average annual temperatures. Third, qualifying certificates. There's been increasing discussion recently of simply eliminating the qualifying certificate program. I would like to point out, Mr. Chairman, that it is basically the only effective economic growth tool that we have. We don't have any real fiscal policy that we can apply, although we do from time to time, but I think we're hitting our limits in that. We certainly don't have any monetary policy to apply. Changing the structure of the economy is complicated at best. And so with qualifying certificates, we're able to bring in investment from outside the island, and that has been the source of our growth over the past 70 years. Military investment in the 40s and 50s up through the early 60s, mid-60s through the mid-70s. It was tourism investment, again, from mid-80s through the early 90s, tourism investment, and now it's military investment again. All of those bring in sources of funding from off the island. All of those build structures. All of those create jobs. And we can't control military spending, but we sure can invite investment. Fourth, our construction-driven business cycle is about to get a boost, belatedly, with the availability of H-2B workers in the civilian sector. This was foreclosed a couple of years ago by the Citizenship and Immigration Service. The district court has told them to, how do I say, reprocess those applications. And fifth, interest rates are rising, which means the Federal Reserve is expecting inflation to rise. And I think that when there's inflation in the United States, we get it on a somewhat accelerated basis. Now, we did have a panel discussion in the second part of the forum, and I've tried to just kind of condense what was said there. We had a tax accountant on the panel who said, don't change our application of the Internal Revenue Code here. Do not delink from the Internal Revenue Code. And his main concern was that there would be a dual filing requirement. His position was to not delink. That's correct. Second, there was, I guess, some criticism of our legislative body. And the increase in the gross receipts tax from early this month through the end of September, and then a reduction in the gross receipts tax back to the 4% rate, and adding on a 2% sales tax. This creates a great deal of instability in our tax system. The formulation of tax policy should be longer term and should also be better constructed in how those policies are formed. Third, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act has not had the expected effect of economic growth, increased wages, or increased investment. Much of the, if you will, windfall from the tax decreases among corporations and small businesses has gone into dividends and increased incomes for the owners of the businesses. And for some of the major corporations, Apple being a prime example, doing a stock buyback, Apple to the tune of $100 billion in stock buyback. Man, I wish I had $100 billion to buy something. There was some discussion of Bitcoin and how these cryptocurrencies may benefit or not economies around the globe, and particularly in the United States and in Guam. The consensus there was they're scary. There's no sound foundation behind them. And there was a discussion of millennials and the changes that we're seeing demographically and how that's impacting the economy.
Is that pretty much it, Joe?
I'm sorry?
Is that it?
Isn't that enough?
Okay, thank you, sir. I wanted to go back to when you mentioned about the delinking, because that was a discussion we had, but Mr. Jornet wanted to make sure that we, if anything, at least have the economic model so we know where we're at.
Yes.
We need to start up, not necessarily go the route of delinking, but put the program together so we know where we're at. So if a discussion is ever brought up, we know where we're standing. Not just saying, don't delink, stay link, or saying, get rid of the QC, but we need the QC. But I honestly believe if we have the economic model, we can actually take a look at it completely of where we're at and where we want to go. So we would be looking forward to that, Ms. Benito, on that. Now, going back to the BBT and the sales tax, when they mention it should be longer term, are are they saying that the GRT should stay at 5%? And that maybe the legislature, the body can decide later to reduce it? Because I can understand where a lot of folks are saying the price went up. When you reduce it to 4, the price is not going down, but you're attaching a 2%. So maybe just keep the 5 so that the business can pay the 5, and there won't be the question of you increase it, but you're not giving us back money. You're not reducing the cost, and you're attaching a sales tax, which maybe doesn't seem right. Is that basically what they're trying to say? Is to keep it?
No, the point that was being made by the panel was to be much more deliberative in creating and changing tax policies. We had a compressed time frame. We're facing Lance from Ernst & Young. Lance. Yeah. David John, Lulian Guerrero, and Melanie Mendiola.
I agree with you in a more ideal sense, but this was thrust upon us, and I mean, trying to. This was a moving target, talking about what was going to be in the Tax Reform Act. It was a moving target, and until the president actually signed it, there was no point at trying to figure out what was, going to happen. And so it was only 2 weeks later that we even found out what the effect was going to be. So in an ideal situation, of course, I agree with you, but we were not in an ideal situation. We were thrust upon trying to make some action, and even now, as I look at some of the preliminary numbers, income tax withholding has dropped dramatically. But fortunately, Section 30 money has increased, and of course, April will be the real telltale as to the cash, because that was the effective date. And when the May 20th report comes out, I think all of us are waiting with bated breath as to what's happening. But in an ideal, this was not, and nobody wanted, but I think the urgency was there. So ideally, I agree with you, but we were not in that to contemplate long-term policy.
I'm in full agreement with you. I'm merely reporting what the panelists were saying. I clearly recognize that this was a crisis situation, that something had to be done. And without going further into that, I clearly recognize that. However, I'd like to make another point, and that has to do with raising taxes and then lowering taxes, pricing is going up but then not going down. Ultimately, the market itself resolves that issue, that your price may go up by 1% and stay up by 1%, but 6 months from now, prices will be where they would have been had the tax not gone up by 1%. Because competition is in the market, because the players are the same players. And so it may take time to make the adjustment. In some industries, it's going to adjust much more quickly than in others, but ultimately, the pricing structure goes back to where it would have been before the tax increase and decrease.
Right. As a matter of fact, I've heard that from several stores. They told me, I asked them, why didn't your price go up? It says, it's only 6 months. I can afford the 1% going up on the BBT because the customers are now coming in because they find that the other stores, the prices went up. When the BBT went up, they said, we're okay. We can live with this because, and on 1 October, if the sales tax stays in place, they already know they're not the one paying it. It's the customer's going to be paying the 2%. So they're comfortable where they're standing. And they've had quite an increase in sales. So they're comfortable where they're at. Okay, does any of the members want to chime in on this? We'll consider this open discussion so we can move along on this one real quick because we're pretty much finished with the agenda. Mr. Lesher? Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bradley, for restating the obvious. We were in a crisis. We had to act. This, I agree with the public auditor, this wasn't a decision based upon long-term policy development. It was in a response to a crisis, and I appreciate very much your acknowledgement of the crisis.
I've usually been pretty good at recognizing the obvious.
If only the rest of them did.
Did anybody else want to bring up anything for open discussion? Because I only have one other item. I'd actually be asking the question to both Mr. Carlson and the governor's designee, but I'll wait for if anybody wants to bring up anything openly. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Bobby had mentioned earlier that there's going to be a follow-up study. Is that correct? Or survey poll?
Internal survey among members.
Oh, okay, of the members. I would ask that if it's possible to add a maybe an additional sub-question as far as when it comes to reinvesting in the business, how much of that would companies be willing to put in towards training or reinvesting into their workers? That's been coming up time and time again as when it comes to the need to focus on developing our local workforce. Sure. The question is, so would some of these benefits be moved towards then supporting that?
No, absolutely.
Initiative?
Good question.
I'd appreciate that.
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks. And that'd be useful information for us.
Absolutely.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just wanted to add, Mr. Chair, that we submitted the grant, and we should be hearing something mid-June or late June, and we submitted for $500,000. So we'll know by mid-June if that was approved, and then we can move forward from that. What we want to do is contract an economist to do the feasibility study.
Well, you know, Mr. Bradley would be willing to take a part-time job for $500,000. He'd give you an economic forum. Just kidding. There's your 100 million.
There you go. Okay, just wanted to add.
Okay. Well, the other one, what I wanted to bring up was, you know, during when the Trump Act came in, the Jobs Act, there was an area there that talked about the opportunity zones. And I'm just concerned has the administration taken a look at this? And the only reason why is because we already missed the cutoff date, and or can you brief us a little bit about that, Mr. Les, since you're shaking your head, you can maybe give us some good information that we got some money down the pipe somewhere. Hopefully get down to Vince.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was a deadline for submission to take part, to opt in to the program. We asked for the 30-day extension that was allowable, and we submitted our response prior to the expiration of the 30 days. So we're on the record.
Could you brief, I guess, the members here? Generally, what is this opportunity zone about? Other than me?
I'm just aware of the time frame.
Okay.
Yeah. And that it is an opportunity. There might be some tax implications that the government of Guam may have to weigh in the future. But I think the whole premise of the governor submitting the letter of intent was to be able to at least have his foot in the door, and also the incoming administration have their foot in the door to avail themselves of the opportunity should it prove to be fruitful. So, you know, you're talking about designating certain properties for redevelopment, and there will be some tax breaks, and there's some time frames associated with that, but it will potentially assist in attracting development. The only downside is from a taxation standpoint. You know, what is it that we are giving up? Because again, with many federal programs, we have to shoulder the burden. So the good news is the government of Guam did put in a timely response, and we did identify the prerequisite number of properties.
Okay, well, maybe hopefully in our next meeting you can break it down a little bit more. But I know where you come from, Mister, because I know some of the members probably like, what are you talking about opportunities? This is generally talking about development on Guam and getting federal assistance. That's what it comes down to. It's getting all these breaks, because there's some businesses that are going to have to I guess, write off some money. And the best thing to do is write it off on Guam. And if that's the way to do it, other than the QC program, that might be another way of doing it. It's the federal's QC. And if we can get some of that, I think that will work great with us. Anyone, Mr. Arnett, you look like you're just aching to say something that Joe Bradley was saying that you didn't like, but I understand.
No, I'm learning today, so.
No, that's all right. I'm just soaking it in today. I'm trying to understand.
Senator Brooks, do you have anything? You're the OPA, so you're the one I'm always watching out for in your audits. So is there anything you wanted to bring up to the commission that may direct us, guide us, convince us that we need to go down this road? Anything specific other than watching out and making sure that Revenue and Tax collect all the money they can collect? And then maybe Ms. Benito can talk about a little bit about the tax amnesty that's going on, that started.
If I may, I just came from an audit meeting and we were just discussing, it's a little bit off tangent, so I do apologize, but I think, Bobby, you mentioned something about the H-2B visa, and the meeting I had was with GURA, and what they're saying is, you know, because of the types of projects that they have, which is, you know, below $1 million, with the exception of the police, the relocation of the Hagåtña police station, that they've had to stop the projects. You know, this is federal funding, and I think we need to get a better handle on the effect of the H-2B visa program. It's my understanding that, you know, the applications that were approved by the governor really are going more from military projects as opposed to local projects. And so again, you know, the construction industry is really a driver into economic development. And I keep on hearing a number of projects have been delayed, or they talked about another project, I can't now remember, that was supposed to be up in Toto. They had the groundbreaking, I think it was Ironwood, and since the groundbreaking, nothing has happened. So, you know, and these are projects, you know, kind of like through the income tax rebates. So the H-2B visa is having, to put it mildly, a very you know, we've known about it, a very detrimental effect on the construction industry. And I think that's why I said this might be a little bit off tangent, but it is related to economic development. And I think we, as a government, really need to do more, you know, to stop the denial rates, or, you know, what can we do to stop the denial rates? And if someone could kind of elaborate a little bit more on that, that would really be helpful, because I know Mr. Massey has been talking a little bit.
Yes.
Thank you.
The impact report that we had done and provided in Washington, D.C. Had contributed to some of the changes in the last NDAA, which allowed that relief. Unfortunately, the relief was mainly for the 4,000 workers for direct military buildup projects. And the lawsuit, the recent results of that would, in our minds, the results of that would have provided that relief again for those who were part of the lawsuit. So within, as far as in our office, when the labor certification request that comes through, we have approximately, because we're keeping tabs of these, we have a number of projects, or excuse me, applications that have gone through, past our labor certification at Guam Department of Labor, have gone on to USCIS and have been approved, but those are directly related to the military buildup projects. Those are the NDAA ones, so they pass through USCIS. And the ones that you're expressing, the concern that we have, that we all have, has everything to do with the projects that are not military related, right? We do have a strong base of workers in construction on Guam, but not enough for the additional work that is happening, not to mention those are being siphoned to the military projects, our workforce. So that leaves that gap. And it is a concern of ours. It is out of my purview. What we do at Department of Labor is we're the ones who basically ensure that our American workers first get first dibs. And once we certify that there's no available workers, then we process that through, it lands at USCIS. So the governor, as well as our congresswoman, has been continuously work with the administration to address this. It is still sitting with Homeland Security, USCIS. At this point, there was, I think, 1 or 2 private companies who are outside the gate or non-military that have applied. We're still waiting for the final results from USCIS as far as their final decision, whether they're going through with that, whether they're abiding with the court order or not. And if it's no, then then we're entering a different area now. The best thing that we're doing now at the Department of Labor is developing innovative programs to try to attract people. But we know that those numbers are not nearly enough to fill the large gap. We recognize that. The only way we could do this right now is the foreign laborers, and this is sitting with USCIS. It's way above my tax, my pay grade. But we are keeping tabs with that. I communicate with the Department of Labor. They're trying to do their best to provide us funding to train our locals. And yes, it does contribute to our tax base. Foreign laborers also contribute to our tax base. But unfortunately, that's beyond my scope. At the last Micronesian Island Forum that was conducted 2 weeks ago in Saipan, that was discussed. Saipan also is having their own issues with their shortages and based on their visa situation. But as far as Guam and CNMI, we're facing the same issue. I did speak recently with one of the developers for the federally funded housing development. They're also at a standstill. I mean, it's great to get these grants to build the houses, but if they don't have the construction workers, then we can't spend that money. We can't get people to be working. We can't be having contributing to our tax base. We are looking at some innovative programs to try to maybe look at ways for private businesses, maybe some tax breaks. I'm not sure how that would work out. I am trying my best over at Department of Labor to attract people into the industry, whatever you can do in your respective roles to entice people, but the labor market, the construction labor market, unless they're like indoor electricians or indoor plumber, many workers are not enticed to go into the construction. But there are a number, not enough. I don't know what to say outside of the fact that we're recognizing that the numbers are dire. So we may have to go back again to the drawing board and report back to them the continued impact. If you're interested in the actual numbers that we had projected, it's available on our website. The actual impact report, which was presented, is available electronically there. When we did our presentation, we did predict or project that in the next 5 years, that there was an average of about 4,700 shortage of 4,700. I believe that's where they got their 4,000 number from to say, okay, 4,000, but that's strictly for the military buildup projects. So there was some good that came out of that study. Moving forward, it would be a combination of, I believe, what the private sectors have been doing. A recent visit was in Washington, is that correct? Yeah, so you might want to share that, if there's any outcomes from those visits. But I do know our governor is heading back again for another meeting, so I'll go ahead and share what was said here.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mabini. Ms. Benito, can you tell us a little bit what's going on with the amnesty?
Absolutely, thank you. Anyway, I want to thank you and the speaker and all the senators that recommended and encouraged the department to go ahead and revitalize this program, the amnesty program. It's for all the tax years, all prior years up that were filed or due by December 31st, 2016, and it opened yesterday. So there's a 3-week application period from May 7 to May 28 that you could apply for it. That's the new, the two new things we've done this year was the 3-week period and a 10% down payment on the tax due. And then you have 90 days to pay for it, to pay it off from there, and that would be August 6th.
Okay, and what is the estimate we're looking at bringing in?
We're hoping to bring in at least 20 million.
Okay.
And it's very encouraging because I've heard of a lot of interest out there from CPAs and other people. So collection is very busy right now with a lot of phone calls. And we're also issuing the annual notice for those people that, annual reminder notice for those people that forgot they owe. So we're doing that to help them with, remind them that they do have a tax due with us so that they could use this opportunity and take advantage of it in this program.
Okay. I just want to make sure that you want to also mention that maybe the department is really geared up, that when the 90 days is over, that
yes,
they go full-blown to do what they really need to do for the folks that are due, that didn't apply for the amnesty or don't qualify from it, that I would assume that all the action that needs to take place, maybe levies, seizures, just do what you need to do, and then we'll just see everything take care of itself.
Yes, you're right. This is an opportunity for those people that are delinquent or non-filers to come forward and pay your obligation.
Okay, sounds good. Is there anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Just for the record, so we all have at least the most up-to-date information. I just want to share with that, I pull this up every once in a while, the total filed to date that companies on Guam, as far as for foreign laborers, was 1,315. Of that, 654 have been approved, 64 have been denied, and there's a total of 555 that's still pending with USCIS. So we were individual jobs. Yeah, currently, if I counted correctly, we have 10 companies that are filing under the NDAA, and we have seven companies that are filing that's under the GCA suit. And so we're waiting on what's the result of that. That will be a defining moment as far as the decisions. We're hoping that they'll recognize that the need for economic, economic situation of Guam will require those workers.
Thank you. If there's nothing else that any of the members wants to bring forward, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion from Mr. Lester, second by Ms. Benito. It is now, what time is it? 5:30? Good evening, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching, and members, thank you for coming. I will be informing you of our next meeting. And hopefully the other surveys will be done. We'll get a copy of the impact on the Department of Labor and everything else, and hopefully the grant will be granted by then. Our meeting will probably not be until July. Okay, it's like every other month. So it gives everything a chance. Okay? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.